Gentlemen, the time is now. So let me draw your attention now to the podium. Remember that we are live streaming and the audience is in focus, so I've called this gathering to order. And the teacher in me needs everybody's undivided attention. I'd like to recognize the presence of the Vice Principal of the South Louis Community College, Dr. Merle Sinclair Auguste. I'd also like to recognize some of our partners in this venture, including the OECS, Flow, Valeri, Acid Productions, Massey Stores, and Computer World. Management, faculty, and staff of the South Louis Community College, our specially invited guest, and that includes the senior members of the St. Lucia Fire Service, our distinguished speaker this evening, and Mrs. John Baptiste. Thank you for being here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, our viewers online, a very special good evening, and thank you for being here with us. My name is Natalie Jolie Fanis, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here to our second in the lecture series, Uprising, the Illumination series. It is indeed an honor to have you here on our campus. For those of you who missed this beautiful evening view that's on the morn, next time we invite you to be live here with us as well. But it is a pleasure to have you joining us online. Without further ado, to put this whole series, lecture series in context, I'd like to invite the chair of the Illumination series, Mr. Vladimir Lucien, to do the opening remarks. Please welcome Mr. Lucien.
Okay, good evening everybody. Please allow me to adopt the protocol established by the wonderful host. Welcome again. Very nice to have you here for our second Illumination lecture, and delivered by another eminent member of staff. To give a little bit of background to what we're doing again, and to focus on the wider attention of what we're hoping to do is, and we have engineers so they could correct me if I'm using the wrong terms, but we're trying to put ramparts and beams onto that bridge between SALCC and the community. That's very rudimentary engineering vocabulary, but so we're trying to continue to create that bridge that we hope to create with these lectures, where you, the community, come here, and that community includes our staff, come here at night, which some of you don't get to do often. It's a wonderful sight, isn't it? Right? And for us to go out to the community, and one of the ways in which we're doing that is in fine style, in modern style, through our live stream. And I'd like you to know that our last lecture, our inaugural lecture, had over 200 viewers online, and we had pretty much a packed house here. So I think we're doing pretty good. You could give us a round of applause if you're so moved. Right? So the aim is really that, to stretch a hand out to the community and the community to us, to also remove the stigma of ivory towerism that is there and associated with academia. So the topics you see us discussing here are, yes, intellectually rigorous and all of that, but of practical application, practical importance to the society that surrounds us, and of course to us here at the college. So it's a matter of taking research that normally would find itself languishing in a library somewhere at the universities where these scholars studied, and bringing it, making it come alive, and making it come alive in various ways. In bringing you here, to have the people directly in front of you and to have them interact directly with the community, college community and broader, as well as to have them interact with the world really, because our viewers are not just St. Lucians logging on online, they are also regional and they are also international as well. So the world is watching SALCC and watching St. Lucia through us. So I think it's I think it's a brilliant venture, if I may say so myself. And I'm glad that you are here to share it with us and continue to empower it, because you are part of that bridge. Okay, so I'd like to just thank everybody who's here. There's quite a bit of staff, which is really encouraging. We're very, very grateful for that. I'd really like to thank the committee that literally works magic every time for this to happen. Their names are at the back, but Dora, Natalie, Royston, Michael Hart, let me say thank you here officially. And we are poised to have a very, very interesting lecture. I've gotten to speak to our eminent speaker about the area of interest, which I had no clue about, but is absolutely fascinating. So I'm sure that you in no way wasted your time in coming here to share the evening with us. And you could tell me whether I was wrong at the end of the evening. Okay, so let's have a good evening. Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucian, for that background and introduction. And we are going to get straight into the lecture tonight. And to introduce our presenter is the head of the Mechanical and Engineering Department at the Division of Technical Education and Management Studies at the South Louis Community College. Please help me welcome Mr. Peril.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Fannis. Good evening to all our visitors, colleagues, invited guests, and sponsors also. Welcome to the second presentation of this Illumination series. This evening, I have the honor and pleasure of introducing the guest speaker, my colleague, Mr. Rohan Baptiste. Mr. Rohan Baptiste has been a lecturer at the college at the Technical Division of Technical Education Management Studies for more than a decade. He's a product of this noble institution himself. He did his post-secondary training in automotive engineering, after which he gained a scholarship to study his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering at the University of Las Vegas in Santa Clara, Cuba. On return to St. Lucia, he took up his teaching position at the college, D10s again, in the Mechanical Engineering Department, a department which I'm happy to have him there. During the period after his return, he taught physics, automotive theory, automotive practical courses, and many of the other related courses to the engineering and practical fields. In 2015, Rohan shared some fantastic news with us that he gained another opportunity for academic development, this time to study for his postgraduate degree. The experience, which he described as fascinating, moved him through several European countries in pursuit of a master's degree. A stint in the University of Lund, Sweden, another in Ghent University, Belgium, a third at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and then he graduated with the International Masters of Science and Fire Safety Engineering degree. A teacher and a trainer in a motor vehicle technology and engineering here at the college, Mr. Baptiste has impacted the students, now leaders in the local industry, garages, schools, private institutions, and these things. He's established a strong relationship between the automotive industry and the college, ensuring that our students gain the most up-to-date training, the best job placement for internship, and long-term employment. This relationship is also critical in obtaining donations for valuable training equipment to the college. Possessing a keen knowledge in research, analytics, and problem solving, along with report writing or fire engineering, he has worked as a fire safety engineer as well as a mechanical, electrical, plumbing consultant. Mr. John Baptiste has spearheaded several projects related to both his fields of endeavor, mechanical engineering and fire safety, and is well known in the St. Lucian community in regard to the latter. A certified member of the Association of Professional Engineers of St. Lucia, member of the International Association of Fire Safety Science, Students Chapter, and several other organizations. Mr. John Baptiste has excelled in his field. His fluency both in Spanish and English further expands the reach of his research and the wisdom in those areas. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Baptiste is well positioned and armed with the knowledge, expertise to present this second lecture of the Illumination series, Panic and Peril, Human Behavior in Fire Situations. Now, when I first read that topic, and I know a little bit of his background, I can think of a lot of engineering structures that were brought down by fire, a lot of disasters, but the one that most prominently stands in my mind is the World Trade Center in 9/11. And then I see panic and peril, human behavior in fire situations, and I think of the difficult choices those people had to make on the 70th, 80th, 90th floor of that building as the fire raged. I hope tonight, after the speech, we will get some idea of some of the engineering techniques and methods that are used to mitigate such choices, and we will have an appreciation of the fire standards and these things that we should consider to be relevant. It gives me great pleasure. A round of applause for our presenter, Mr. Rohan John Baptiste.
Good evening, one and all. I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Peril, for an interesting, acknowledgement. I want to say good evening to the people that are online and to the people out here right now. Tonight I'm going to talk about panic and peril in human behavior and fire situations. The word panic is frequently used in media accounts and statements of survivors, emergency, evacuations and fires. But what does it really mean? Is it a phenomenon that actually occurs? Despite the numerous evidence that panic is a very rare occurrence in fires, the idea of panic and the term continue to be used in public. It is necessary to demystify the misconception that panic is an essential element of fire. The essential element of fire in the aspect of fire safety and human behavior. Tonight my lecture will be based on the media and society views, definitions, anecdotes, case studies, expert views, role of information, good and bad decisions, and held a conclusion. In conversations in the media, for example, even fire experts have portrayed occupants' actions in fires as panic behavior. If specific factors leading to panic are identified, it will be possible to predict how panic could have happened and take measures to curb such an outcome. I will summarize definitions of panic behavior discussed in literature related to the response of people during fire situations. I will also examine the concept from the view of general public, including the media, evidence of behavior from fire incidents, which are presented through anecdotal accounts and case studies that have been characterized as panic. As you can see, taken from previous statements, the newspaper, in the case in point here from ABC News, stated panic is a likely cause of 6 SC fire deaths. The media has been a great fan of panic. The media is an essential source of information and has a major impact on how the public sees the world. The constant attempt to dramatize events plays a big part in the assumption held by the public that people panic in fire emergencies. Another form of information is for advertising. In this scenario there, the company uses the scenario of panic kills. This company is actually trying to state that in emergency evacuation systems can get them out alive. But how do they know that this system can actually help out? How do they know that people actually panic in a situation? What they're using this method to help promote their product. Every product. The cinema also plays a pivotal role in the whole dramatization of panic. Right. The concept of panic, portraying the historical occupants in the variety of emergencies, including fires. People might have been interested in past movies such as Armageddon and also the Towering Inferno in 1974. In the picture of Armageddon, right, we can see that there's a meteor, a meteor that's going to hit the earth. In that scenario there, the science fiction movie depicts that they're going to have a mass destruction, so they can create a mass panic scenes. In the other movie to our left, the Towering Inferno, we can see the blaze, right, the blaze of a building of fire to the uppermost part of the building. You can see that they have firefighters or fire hose or firefighters trying to attempt to put out the fire. In the aspect of these movies, there is a misconception, they depict in an emergency that the characters are often affected when they're trying to escape from a building, trying to escape the building in the fire scenarios. What we have to understand in the movies and the media, right, is a dramatization. It's not real. But the fact that the movie is portraying this, people that have seen the movies, in their minds they'll think that in case of a fire situation, we might be exposed to some circumstances. So the media plays a pivotal role in advertising panic in that form, on a form or the other. Even it can also be found also in fire regulations, where the National Transport Society Board, they actually have a rule or law in one of the standards where they said the use of automatic local sound smoke alarms should not be required in passenger ships. What happened is, like, they thought, like the International Council of Cruise Lines thought that if the public on the cruise ship were aware of a panic situation, they will panic. So they will think that they will lose control of the environment. But after talking to certain fire investigators and doing the research, they realized that actually the installation of such a device can actually help calm the situation. So in 2002, the ICCL, which is the International Council of Cruise Lines, as well as the International Chamber of Shipping, actually allowed cruise ships to install these kind of systems in them to help curb the idea of panic. Panic definitions by individuals. Describing your own behavior when a person feels stressed, anxious, or fearful. Assessing one's own ability to respond to a problem. This is the definition of panic by people. But the definition of panic by others is describing the behavior of others who look anxious, frightened, or scared. Right? If you're behaving shaky, if you're shaking, crying, yelling, etc., people believe that you are panicking. Right? But that is based on the outcomes of the body watching you. You might be screaming, shouting for attention to seek help, but because the body is watching you now, they think that you are panicking because to them, you're behaving in a rational form, not a rational or illogical form. Panic can also be found in definition of panic can also be found in dictionaries, sociology, and psychology literature. In human behavior literature, panic is usually defined as a sort of irrational behavior. And research findings consistently show that people do not exhibit such irrational behavior in fires. In fact, altruistic behavior is seen to be the norm in series of fires. Human behavior sorry about that. Human behavior under stress is relatively controlled, rational, and adaptive. It is also found that cooperation rather than selfish behavior are the predominant even among total strangers. But according to some of the researchers from the early 1950s to the late 1980s, the definition of panic has changed. In case in point, for example, the reaction involving terror, confusion, irrational behavior precipitated by a threatened situation can be a definition for panic. The next one interesting is by Keaton in 1982 that stated, hope to escape through dwindling resources, contagious behavior, aggressively concerned about own safety, irrational, illogical responses. These are terminology used for panic by sociologists, psychologists, and found in the dictionaries. The judgment made in the retrospect of panic. Not judged from the perspective of the person at the time of the event. What was the understanding of the situation? How much time was available to decide? What was the information available, etc. These are the terminologies used for panic. However, stating the first one, what is the understanding of the situation? In panic or behavior, right? As panic. Right? How much time is available to decide what you're doing depends on the environment that you're in. If you have a rapid growing fire, you might try to run from it, right? But all that now is how you interpret the fire. People tend to misinterpret how fast fire can grow from initiation to a fully grown fire. Right? So that time there can actually hinder you. If you don't think properly, can actually, I guess, cause harm or danger to people in the area. Right? So all this also can affect the evacuation time for emergencies. Judgment based on outcome. From the same situation, it can be stated, response, that means you notice that you know the fire has happened, you're alarmed. Right? The response equals fatality, will give you a panic response. If you respond, you have no fatality, then you're correct or heroic response. So this is the interpretation based on the outcome of panic. In other words, if you save somebody, you're a hero. If you die, you panic. But that's again a misconception of understanding the situation of panic. Panic as a concept puts the responsibility on the occupants. As I previously mentioned, if you enter a building and you die, you suffer panic. If you enter a building and you're a hero, that is not panic. So again, it depends on the response to the person or the occupant. Right? Officials are not responsible is the next panic concept. In case, for example, we are here and you have a fire, right? I guess the college will not be held responsible for the actions of the people who are here right now, sorry to say. But the aspect of that is not relation to panic. It's the people's behavior, it's their thought concept of it as well. Right? Nothing can be, number three, nothing much can be done about it if people are irrational or illogical. Not usual for fire safety education. This aspect of the concept of panic, like I mentioned, is the next way to decide again is like it's a irrational or illogical behavior. But how would you know that somebody behave irrational? Right? You are watching from the outside in. As I mentioned before, fighting or flighting, flight, they can determine the outcome of the fire. Right? The concept does not match survivors' descriptions, not useful for fire research. In this area, right, is observer versus individual. Somebody seeing the fire situation and talking about somebody's actions compared to an interview done by an investigator or by a fire investigator, or by a psychologist or by human behavior specialist or even the fire department or police. Their interview from the person might give a different perception of the situation. So panic as a concept have its flaws as well. For the fear of panic, right? Attempt to manage emergency without alerting occupants. As I mentioned before, in the statement for the cruise lines, they thought that if the public or the people on the boat were aware of the situation, it might cause panic. Right? So to control the fear, to control people from running around the different places, not understand what's going on, they do not share information because they fear that people will panic. Again, is a misconception of people analyzing the situation, making poor judgment. Right? Delay providing information to the public. If, for example, there's a fire in certain areas and the staff is trained, they will quickly go and tell other co-workers about the fire situation, right? Or call the boss or the manager about the situation before they let the guests or the people in the area know about the situation, because they fear, for the fear that they will cause panic. People will be irrational and be illogical. So they won't be able to control the environment. Number 3, hides crucial information from occupants. Again, they believe the aspect of control, public control. Less you know, the better for you. That's the perception of it. Panic again. Occupants fear others will panic. Changing risk perception, first to start competitive behavior. In the aspect of changing risk perception is like if, for example, you are escaping through a corridor and you're being advised by somebody and you hear about fire, they're afraid, like, people might run, or people might push somebody to try and escape. However, later on I'll show you through interviews that this doesn't exist. Right. For first to start competitive behavior, it's human nature, if you are afraid of something, that you might behave differently. If you see a window and you see smoke, you might break the window, try to run. Right? That's the whole idea of competitive behavior. If I'm smaller than you, you're bigger than me, you think that you can get to the door before me, so I'm going to create a competitive behavior. So occupants fear that this will happen by the use of panic. Danger concept of panic. Danger of the panic concept. If people panic in a fire, there's not much we can do about it. That's a perception, for panic. Danger of panic. It's like if you have a controlled environment, you know where the fire is, right? If they panic, there's not much you can do because they cannot control them anymore, which is actually a misconception, right? Management is not responsible in case a building is got damage or there's death or fatalities, right? People will blame panic for that situation. However, it can be either for the structure of the building or for poor management. If a building is designed to cater to hold 400 people and you have 500, 600 people, you have changed the environment. So management will not be responsible because they say, okay, people panic, so that's why there was a fatality. So that's why the danger of panic concept is, not taken up by management responsibility. Right now, I'd like to revisit the aspect of panic. Right? More recent research indicates that the fight or flight response, which has long been considered the primary response in stress in humans, is actually more typical of men than women, whose response has begun to be characterized as tend or befriend. This variation behavior between men and women has been observed in fire situations where men are more likely to engage in firefight investigation behavior, whilst women are more likely to alert others. So this is the perception they have realized now over the last 50 years in research from psychologists, sociologists, which has rejected the idea of panic through these investigations. Later on, I'll talk about some events which occurred where the statements was panic, but after interviews through the people that were there, they realized that panic did not exist. People behave in a rational behavior, but just to sell the product, they will say panic. Like Mr. Peril mentioned earlier on, for the World Trade Center attack, people said there was panic. But after investigations by the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, they actually contacted people after to verify, investigate what was the reason, why did people behave. Because if you understand how people behave in fire, you can actually kill the concept, or demystify the concept of panic. Considerable concerns in the fire safety community. This is interesting because from the reports of certain fires, fire investigators can actually help change the standards, right, when it comes to fire safety or evacuation. Because I'm talking about panic and panic. But panic has the concept of panic, I should say, right, if it's misinterpreted or understood, right, can actually help the fire community in the designs. In actually allowing certain amount of people in certain areas. Because the more people you have in an area and you don't control, as stated before, you can, which I don't think is the aspect of panic. They might behave irrationally. If you think that I'm going to save a loved one or something, then you're going to fight or cause harm. Right. Right now I'm going to talk about the anecdotes. Panic is often attributed to ourselves. These are anecdotes taken from investigations conducted by a lady called Patricia Brennan from Victoria University with survivors of serious fires in Australia. In the course of an interview, she found that panic was a behavior reportedly engaged in by others, while the interviewees described their own behavior in more rational terms. Brannon also uncovered several instances where there were significant discrepancies in reported behavior between people at the same events. So through her research of people that had been in a series of fires, the whole aspect has changed. Right? In the perceptions given by people themselves, they stated, for one, I'm a person quick and I panic if I can't get it done. Some also stated the next scenario, very panicky as I waited for help. Third scenario, when told of the fire, she started to panic. Right now I'm going to give an anecdote about a situation, and I hope after reading this you understand the aspect of, well, the conception from the reaction of the person after their interview. A dryer fire in a hotel guest laundry. In this case, when the receptionist was told about the fire in the guest laundry, she started to panic, in her words. But her actions were appropriate. She ran down to a laundry to investigate. When she saw the smoke, she left to call the fire department. She then alerted the kitchen staff to come and give her a hand. Though they thought she was joking, then they alerted the guest. She and the others also stopped a guest from trying to extinguish the fire with a fire extinguisher, playing hero. Situation like that will arise. People might either fight or flight. But if you don't understand how fast the fire is burning, trying to extinguish it might actually cause more harm than good. And apart from that, she also commented in an interview on how amazing it was to watch everyone else's reaction. Apparently she was surprised that they acted so calmly and effectively. Again, this is from her research from the statement I said before. When she was told of the fire, she started to panic. The perception of panic from the observer, seems stated. Perception from survivors of serious fires, again, the next case study, where stated by the young lady again, by Brannon. The elderly residents heard the alarm sounding, they go into panic. Her husband was upstairs screaming and panicking. Occupants in the next room were very frightened, yelling and throwing things throughout the window. Again, these are perceptions of panic from observers. Right? I'm going to give the next description again. Describing husband as panicking. In the account of a woman whose husband had gone upstairs to investigate the smell of smoke, she asked if she told her husband when she took the child and went outside, and she replied that she did not. He was upstairs screaming and panicking. She had mentioned that when he discovered the fire, which was actually caused by a curtain that had been ignited by the heater, he called downstairs for water, which another relative brought to him. She described herself as shaking uncontrollably outside, even after her husband came out and reported that everything was under control. Although she described him as screaming and panicking, the actions she reports are calling for water to extinguish the fire and taking control of the fire before any significant damage was done, thus showing responsible actions in serious situations. So him screaming and shouting for water, she thought he was actually panicking. Right? So misconception of his behavior. For her might have seemed irrational, but I think it was rational because they're trying to fight the fire. So again, the aspect of panicking from different people. Right now I'm going to talk about a case study. Right, as Mr. Peril mentioned before, the World Trade Center in September 2011. In our first picture, illustration, we have the smoke from different parts of the building, perceived from somebody along the streets. If you can, I don't. Online article, September 12, 2011. If you look on the staircase now, do you see any form of panicking happening there? But again, the media want to sell the product. Describing the experience in that day. One of the people quoted describes panic in the stairwells in the second tower before it was struck. His account only describes a crowded situation in stairwells and elevators. This was a contrast to the findings of several evacuation studies, as I mentioned before, which are consistent in their reporting of orderly, altruistic behavior by most of the occupants interviewed. Of the survivors in the World Trade Center 1, which is the first tower that was struck, we reported the perception of others. 60% judge others to be calm compared to 54% in World Trade Center 2. Only 21% in World Trade Center 1 described others as momentarily panicked compared to 39% of World Trade Center 2. In World Trade Center 2, the perception of momentary panic occurred mainly after World Trade Center 2 was hit. Because what happened in the situation, people in the second Trade Center saw the situation, so they were actually evacuating the building. So they didn't know that they had another plane approaching them. So they were calm and collective. After the second impact, and they realized what happened, they were kind of shaking the building, so they were momentarily panicked, as stated by previous people. But from the statement or research done, as you can see, 60% in World Trade Center 1 stated that they were cool and they were calm and they were rational behavior. There was no sign of panic. And in the picture they showed a while ago,
on February 20th, 2003, 100 people lost their lives and 230 were injured in one of the deadliest nightclub fires in U.S. history. The fire was caused by pyrotechnics that were set off as the band Great White began to play its opening song. The illegal indoor use of outside fireworks led to the igniting of highly flammable soundproofing foam in the walls of the stage. Within 30 seconds of the fire starting, the entire stage was engulfed. Most of the 462 occupants ran for the narrow hallway of the front entrance. The entryway soon became packed with terrified people all trying to leave at once. Some were trampled to death as the frightened crowd tried to escape the smoke and flames that were closing in behind them. In the chaos, the front door became a tangled mess of bodies as dozens of people piled on top of each other in a frenzied attempt to flee. Within 5.5 minutes, the entire club was engulfed in flames and hundreds of lives were lost and ruined.
Actually caught the stage on fire because they had a kind of soundproof material. As you can see, the video was taken from a cameraman that was recording the show. Sorry. He actually, when he was trying to escape, now he turned the camera across to show people leaving the building. If you saw from the video, people did not behave irrational. They were actually walking out the building calm and collective. However, from a news article, they said that people were panicked. They mentioned panic behavior, people behaving irrational. If you remember from the video, they showed like people at the door where you had like they would trample each other. But this was the situation stated by Kitten. Well, in elements of, well, Kitten by elements of panic, hope to escape in dwindling resources and aggressive behavior about their own safety. So people understood that the situation changed quickly because within 30 seconds, as mentioned before, the fire started to spread, smoke started to spread. So since the door area, well, the area where they tried to exit was the only known area. In the video now, you can see that somebody actually jumped back over to actually try and pull people from the door where they were trapped. So that's not an aspect of any panic behavior. That's actually a situation where people try to help each other, right? And the aspect of running is actually a flight behavior. In case of fear, you would run. If you see smoke coming towards you, you would run, right? Okay. Here is a layout of the fire, well, of the building previously mentioned in the video, right? This
The main medical facility in the south was gutted by a ferocious blaze early Wednesday morning. St. Jude's Hospital surgical ward and the operating theater was completely devastated. One of the security guard on duty, Lawrence Sonny, says he noticed the AC unit on fire.
And the AC when it was on fire, so I went to the ward and pigs. I took out all the children on the ward. I went to the top surgical ward and make every patient come out. And then the place was already on fire, so I could not do anything else but help the patient to come out. And I left some of them inside, but I could not do anything. The place was black out.
Assistant Divisional Officer Jean of the Southern Division says the fire service was hampered initially by water.
It's a little premature to make any pronouncement on the fire. Although we had some problems with water initially, so we seem to be the water situation under control.
Fires Benjamin is the disaster coordinator at St. Jude's Hospital. He says most of the patients were evacuated and transported to Campus B.
Operations are in progress right now. The fire has been contained. We have taken some of the patients. In fact, most of the patients, we have carried them down to Campus B. At this point in time, we have nurses and doctors down at Campus B as well as other helpers, auxiliary helpers, trying to get the patients comfortable as much as possible. We are trying to get the most important supplies down to Campus B. And our two main objectives right now is patient accountability and clearing all our equipment and whatever we can salvage down to Campus B at this point.
He ended up helping people, alerting them about the fire situation, and actually helping them to evacuate. So as you can see, human behavior is different in aspect of the situation of panic. As mentioned before, after by the disaster manager, people help each other out. A lot of volunteers came through. So again, the mention of there's no aspect of fire of panic in the situation of fire. Experts' point of view. Panic, if it happens, as mentioned before, shown before, it is really extremely rare. It will involve a handful of people and will be for a short duration. In that duration, you're trying to assess your situation and try to understand what's going on. So for a couple of seconds, you might try to see, you might be panicking if it happens, or might behave in irrational behavior. Here is a picture of the World Trade Center in 2011 after the fact of the fire, of the event of the fire. People are helping each other out, as you can see. So again, voluntary work, assistance, right? People, as you can see, human natures, people are social animals. We tend to help each other out. We display altruistic behavior, right? We are helpful and courageous and cooperative. You imagine after fire helping somebody out, as said before. In response to fire, the difficulty is, can we trust people to respond to as predicted to during a fire? Depends on who, depends on where, depends on when. In the fire situations we saw there for the disco, people actually tried to help each other out, cool, calm, walking out the building. In the last picture I showed you there, people helping each other out. Again, depends on who. If you have fire in old, like the elderly place, hostel, they get different reaction from people compared to a secondary school. People are younger and behave differently. Expectations of fire from people, I should say, is people are intelligent, can think for themselves, able to make correct decisions according to the information available and for past experience. People have been through a fire will behave differently because they know how to do, what to do, how to react. People are helpful and courageous and cooperative, but they're not fire experts. Because if you misinterpret how the fire is going to behave, how fast it's going to burn, you can actually cause more harm than good. So if you see a fire, my advice to you is please do not try to fight, right? Try and run away. Your safety is more important. That's my point of view. And people lack the experience of fire, right? Even leave it, as I said, leave it for the professionals in case of fire situation. We need to reset our expectations of people. People respond best if they're given information available to them in a timely manner. If you know where the fire is, right, you'll be able to decide if I'm going to fight it or if I'm going to run, if I'm going to help somebody or what the situation is. You analyze the situation because you know exactly what's going on. So the aspect of being irrational and logical will change because you understand the situation that you're in. And people use a familiar plan of action. If you have signs located properly, if you have exit signs, if you have a proper like exit directions or location of doors, you understand the situation, you'll escape easier. Right? Your reaction time will be much less for evacuation purposes. The role of information is important. Information to a fire through education, training, drills, advertising clips, brochures, signs, etc. can help a situation. Right? Information during the fire, alarms, PTA system. Because right now, what they're doing right now in the aspect of fire safety is they use system that tell you exactly where the fire is. They actually tell you fire is going on, please be alert, there's a fire. However, bad decisions fighters, building designers should take this into account when implementing regulations around these findings. So the research of buildings now can actually help you improve the standards of welcome to fire safety. Information should be given provided in the early stage of fire development. It should pinpoint exactly where the fire is. Right? Where it's likely spread and location of the nearest exit. People must understand when it gets up before we continue. At this point, I like to say thank you very much for my presentation. I think my time is up. Thank you. I would say that. Sorry about that. Oh, okay. Well, concluded. That's it.
We now invite Mr. Vladimir Lucian, who will serve as the moderator for this session, where we invite comments and questions from our audience and our live streamers, who can always type in their comments and questions, and we will relay them to the presenter.
Okay, thank you very much for a very enthralling lecture about a subject that seemed so simple. Well, somewhat, you know. We think we have some directions on the wall or seen one or two advertisements and we're safe and we understand it. Personally, I just have to say on a personal note, one of the things I found very, very fascinating was how good he was at PowerPoint. I'm very terrible at it. So I was somewhat marveling at how well it was set up and how it helped the interaction, you know, the videos and all the various illustrations. So a few things I noted just to rattle from my notes. I mean, one of the things at the center of the presentation was, and I completely agree that I would have been part of that misconception of panic as the primary reaction to disaster generally. And from early on in your lecture, I had to ask myself, I mean, that's not absolutely so. You hear about accidents where the driver manages to do something to save his life, which means that he's operating with a certain degree of consciousness, although it doesn't come altogether as altruistic, because I guess you could save only one person. But let me start with perhaps one of those at the bottom of my list. But there was a gendered perspective to it, where we were looking at male and female behavior in fire situation in terms of panic. You know, was it that you were saying men tend to panic and scream more than women, or what is it that you were saying?
I guess. In reference to gender, it is stated that men tend to investigate and try to help the situation, while women tend to alert other people, like take care of their loved ones. So men will try to play hero, in simple terms, and try to fight the fire. So the situation I mentioned about a man panicking was actually alerting a friend downstairs about screaming and shouting about getting water for him. So like his wife was outside the building, thought that he was panicking by shouting and screaming. Again, a misconception of irrational behavior. He actually tried to help or I guess assist, ask for water. So if he shouted water, 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 Then I get out, you're not panicking, in simple terms.
Okay, so it's the sense of a certain heightened form of behavior being taken for panic, and panic being associated with irrational. Yeah. But one of the things I was also interested in, before we bring it out to the audience, I'm not going to hog it, I assure you, is that, I mean, you pointed to quite a bit of literature, and not just literature in the palpable sense, but video and all of that, around a kind of, what I would say, without the totally negative connotation, a kind of propaganda of panic, really, where there's a lot of literature stating that the general behavior is panic. Now, in an era where there is, proven associations, for instance, between scientific research and the market, where people, it's profitable for scientists to say certain things. I mean, the question that came to mind was who are these interested parties that would, I mean, is it just an innocent misconception, or is there a sense, is there something to be gained, or from that? Because you did mention that corporations are tend to not bear the blame because of this notion of panic. So if something happens, the fire or something, they blame it on panic, and they have less responsibility for poor engineering, lax attitudes to worker safety, and all of these things. So I would like you to just comment on that. I mean, where is most of the literature coming from? And is it entirely innocent or innocuous?
Well, the information I mentioned before is actually taken from investigators in the NFPA, as I mentioned, people that had to change aspect of panic. Because as I mentioned before, 50 years ago, panic was what was selling. Like I said, people use the concept to run from their responsibilities. So investigators realize now, okay, if you survive a fire, let us understand exactly what happened. Psychologists actually enter the fire safety, actually enter the fire safety world. They decide, okay, we're going to investigate situations by asking questions. Can you ask a question now, you can actually get to the source of the problem. Through investigations. So the aspect of investigation by sorts of psychiatrists, sociologists, even fire safety engineers now have gone after the fact of a fire. So when you talk to somebody after, you get a better perception. And as I mentioned before, that can change the whole aspect of building designs. That can actually change the code of building designs, because the size of a building will change, the size of a corridor will change, because all this is already done by codes. All the fires in the buildings are buildings built by codes, right? But however, the outcomes are not what you expect. You design with hope that something will not happen. When something happens, right, it's supposed to work. But if you investigate, I mentioned before, like this young lady, Patricia Brennan from Australia, decided to actually ask people, what is the situation like? Because, like I said, papers will sell, media will sell it by the aspect of panic. The stakeholders, the business will say, the person panic. So my building was not a fault of the situation, because they behave irrationally. They jump for try to escape by helping somebody, by pushing somebody, by injuring them. They will say because the person panicked, that was the situation. But if the corridor, like I stated before in the disco fire, you saw the size of the corridor. Could you imagine 41 people fit in that area trying to escape a situation? So you quickly say because they were pushing each other, they died. But because of the environment, that was the cause of the situation. So investigation by other people asking questions, watching the video, because I believe if the cameraman did not turn his camera in the situation for the disco, they would never believe that people were so calm exiting the building. They would say people panic. That's why they cause death. So fire safety engineers, psychologists, sociologists, firemen right now actually go in that direction of a fire, trying to understand the situation.
Okay. So we'll send it out to, we'll send it out to the audience. But as this is happening, I just want you to talk about, is this a fairly new area of interest and study? Because I mean, if it's still new, I mean, it's interesting in the sense that we just tell us how new this area of study is. I mean, I have not heard about it before, and a lot of people are still under the misconception, I'm sure, in this room about panic.
Well, the aspect of fire safety is a fairly new field. It's been around from the early 1800s, early 1900s. But however, the aspect of investigations has changed, because materials have changed, human behavior has changed. The reaction, like case in point, when I was studying, they have some kind of materials chairs were made of, right? And what they realized after investigations, the investigating people that died, they realized people died from smoke inhalation than the fire. So that now prompted investigation about the materials that which furniture is made out of now, right? Actually caused people to die before the fire hit them, right? The whole aspect of materials burning, the size of the room, the ventilation of the room, the size of the windows, right? How far the exit is from a point of fire, right? All this now is actually being new. In, for example, the fire in Dubai for New Year's Eve, where they had to build the facade, caught on fire. They investigated that now is being investigated because the building was built to code. However, because of the inclination of the building now, you have what you call a lateral fire spread. Fire behave differently when it burns up than when it burns horizontally. So now that aspect now is actually being investigations. And what happened now, a new aspect of fire safety is what they call performance-based design. Is use simulations from fire situations to understand actually what happened. Because the codes are used for designing, however, you can never predict the outcome. But performance-based designs use simulations of people evacuating, use the fire spread, the spread of smoke, how much smoke you're going to get in the area can actually help you improve the safety aspect of a building.
Okay, let me just see. So as we ask the questions, let's keep it brief, get to the point, and so everybody could get a chance to ask, okay? So from the beginning we say just keep the questions brief or comments so that he has a chance to answer and everybody else, will be able to. Thank you.
All right. You or one of the firemen may answer this question. Has there been any proper investigation whether the modern buildings we have on the boulevard and in Trent Street have these fire precautions? Or where the exits are, when you put a sign on the door or you put an arrow path on the ground, whether that has been assured in those new buildings. The second part is that since a lot of our doors and exits are electronically controlled, fire starts, the thing breaks down, people get trapped. Is there any way that within the building of those structures that provisions are made to protect people in case of fire?
Well, the first aspect of the codes for St. Lucia, I guess we can ask the fire department to answer this question. Part of me, this is fairly new to me. However, in modern research I mentioned before, buildings are built to codes. But after investigations, case in point, like for example, the exit signs. Exit signs are used for illumination. Some of them are illuminated. However, what they realize, the color used for exit signs, if you use illuminescent color, after a certain period of time, the smoke will actually block off the light you're going to get. So right now, that has been actually revisited. In aspect of emergency doors, what I know, what I've known is like in case of emergency, the doors, they don't operate on the electricity. They actually unlock. It's like when you push a door, you're supposed to exit the building. So doors by right are not supposed to lock on you when exiting the building. And also, I was talking to Vladimir, the doors in overseas in Europe, they actually open out. So when you evacuate in the building now, you run straight out. You don't pull towards you when you exit in the building. However, in St. Lucia, for security purposes, they put like a frame out the door, so you pull in, you don't pull out. But that has been changed now through the aspect of investigations. So that's a way we should go into as well. In the aspect of signage, what they realize now, exits in EXIT is being phased out. What is what you call pictograms. So you have a diagram showing a man running, a door, and an arrow pointing, which we hardly use in St. Lucia. Hopefully this code is going to be picked up by the environment or fire safety environment.
Just a comment on the statement, answering the question. Every industrial occupancy or every business occupancy, there has to be fire safety engineering during the construction. The plans are submitted to the fire department, and they do an assessment and make recommendations on the fire safety provisions for every industrial or structure or business. you know, and those submissions or those drawings will not be approved by physical development unless there is fire safety engineering. So yes, we go into every industrial occupancy before it is constructed or even those existing and make those fire safety recommendations. And if you have an existing business and the use of probably that occupancy is changed, maybe it was used as probably as a hotel and you want to change it to a warehouse, we still have to go in because of the change of use. Because the recommendations for a hotel may not be applicable to that of a warehouse. Yes. So yes, that is done. Mm-hmm. In terms of the signage, Mr. Baptiste made mention of pictograms, which is, well, we know pictures are universal. Some persons we still have to admit may be illiterate, depending on the age. And if they find themselves in that situation, they still have, you know, to find a way out of the building. So the pictogram, right, is a much better means of signage than you know, the exit signs. Not only being illiterate, but you have persons of different language, you know. Pictures transcend language barriers, especially at places like airports where you have different nationalities using. It is very important that you use those pictures, because regardless of the language that the person is familiar with, they will be able to understand the signage.
Maybe I just want to add one more point. In reference to exit signs and locations, what we have realized, like where you have an emergency exit, people tend to put curtains, put chairs, put desk, put other things in the place where it can actually affect the evacuation of buildings, which we need to stop. We need to actually help or go through buildings and actually be aware and see if you block this is going to cause trouble. Even the location of fire extinguishers. I've seen fire extinguishers being used as doorstops in buildings. So again, the aspect of fire safety should be enforced in people by the environment. Let the public know exactly how dangerous it is to block or use your fire extinguisher as a doorstop, right? And also blocking fire exits. Because what they normally say, or what happens, I mean, talking to previous people, is companies invest in security more than fire evacuation, fire safety. Because it doesn't happen frequently, or they say if it happened, we will be safe. Which is a misconcept which we need to change in the aspect of fire design. Now, like I mentioned before, as mentioned by Officer Victorin, is like we as fire safety engineers and fire department, we have to make the public more aware. If you have construction going on and the building is designed for a certain amount of people, keep a certain amount of people in that area. Do not add any extra features because it's approved by the fire department. Say, okay, it's approved, I can put A, B, and C, because that will not happen. It's after it happens now, that's where investigations come in. Now realize, okay, the situation was different compared to what they had in the drawings. So the aspect of, I say, investigation, the public sector, private sector should take the responsibility as well to make sure the building is safe for evacuation.
Just to let you know, we have a question coming from online, but we will take one more here in-house and then move to the online question.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have two questions. One of them, while you were talking, I wondered whether you came across the phenomenon of the one individual who suddenly starts screaming and yelling, and everybody else starts screaming and yelling and running as well. But more important, because I haven't heard that at all, what provisions are there for emergencies generally for people who are differently abled here? If you are deaf, it doesn't matter what noise is happening, you don't know.
Yes.
So that one is the more important question. Thank you.
In response to your second part of your question, investigation again, human behavior. They use what you call lights as well too for emergency signs to actually alert people. Yeah, I don't know in solution. I'll prescribe it in solution to use this kind of symbols, right? Like flashing lights actually draw attention. And also I'm going to draw a point again to one of my previous lecturers, is like what they realize, the color of the lights makes a difference. When people see red, they think it's danger. If you see green, you think you have to go. So we see right now people be alert of the situation, but they are afraid. Also, what happened now in the upgrading of fire department fire safety is like emergency doors, they use glass. In the doors, they put like glass in the door so you can see outside or behind what's behind the door. Because in case of emergency, you don't want to push the door or exit through a door, and you, in case you have like you actually enter a place where you have smoke. So for investigations, if I put a glass in the door, I can see outside, so I believe I'm safer, I'll go through that door. So that's the whole aspect of changing when it comes to fire safety. It's an evolving situation. And for instance, about the person shouting before, yep, people might believe like you might do that in a situation, and people might think that you are panicking, but you might be not to draw their attention. Because as I mentioned early on, for example, in the anecdote I gave about the dry cleaner fire, when the secretary was telling her co-workers about the fire, they didn't believe her. They thought she was joking because they never believed that was going to happen. So she now had to change, I guess, the tone, people understand. But it becomes situations. And I have to understand, say this. People are social creatures. If you're in a room right now and we have a fire, people will not move unless somebody moves. And this has been proven in investigations of cinemas. Where you hear a fire alarm going off, people sit down there and wait. Right? Because they will believe if I get up, I am stupid, I am behaving irrational, and as I'm not sticking to the norm of being part of the group, part of the crowd. So they will sit down there and wait until somebody gets up. So that now, as I said, is being investigated. Human behavior in situations like that. So again, it's evolving.
Dr. Debrady looked like she will run. I don't know.
Did we have a response from the fire officers? Yes. I can attest to that. It happened during an earthquake. Everybody sat in the room and nobody moved until one of us moved.
Yeah.
In response to the question about the differently able persons, yes, now in fire safety engineering, we take into account differently able persons. For example, in addition able to hear and can see. As well, any assembly occupancy, or probably depending on the height of the building, will also ask for ramps so that persons who are not able to move freely, in case of evacuation, they can get out unassisted. That is very important as well.
I was just stating, just for the record, and I'm glad that you are here as well, and we're talking about St. Lucia in regard to this, because one of the things we recognized in doing the lecture was that this year is the 70th anniversary of the 48 fire. So it's telling to look at these situations, how far have we come, how much more sophisticated a society we are in regards to the safety of human beings. So keep that in mind as we go along.
Question from Kathy, our online Kathy. Thank you for joining us. Her question is, are there any studies which can predict people's behavior in fire situation?
Okay, in answering to Kathy, there have not been any situation you can predict human behavior. That's the most difficult aspect of it. What has been done in the aspect of fire safety is they have two concepts where you have A-set and you have R-set. R-set is the definition of required safe evacuation time, and A-set is where you have available safe evacuation time. That's the aspect of being aware, notified of the fire, actually being pre-movement, and you have movement. In aspect of fire safety, pre-movement is the most difficult thing to resolve or to kind of understand, because people, like I mentioned, behave differently. The reaction from a 12-year-old or 20-year-old or 40-year-old is different. However, if somebody's on fire before, they tend to react different, tend to react faster. What's been done to help this is actually VR, virtual reality simulations, or simulations and virtual reality. They have what you call Pathfinder, or the software where they have the design of the building and use I see what you call it again. Use there's a simulation, but they use people, not people, they call them like virtual people, yeah, virtual people, but use them to actually behave in a fire situation. So what you do, what you call them, not anecdotes, nodes. They're called nodes in the design, right? It's like people that is a design where give people certain densities. It's like what they realize in the corridor, if you have big people, you have small people, the reaction time is different. The time to evacuate the building is different. If you have people wearing too much clothes, right, that increases the density, that actually changes the reaction time. Investigations have been done about people, what they realize, people don't like to be stuck to each other. So when they design now, you have to have allowances for space between people, because that can actually hinder evacuation times. So simulations are being used to actually get a better idea of how people might behave, how people might evacuate a building.
My question is for outdoor events. I know your presentation was based on buildings and building codes and you know, the amount of space that is placed for doorways and the number of exits, but mass events is something that happens in St. Lucia quite often, and a lot of the time in the event of an emergency, a fire or whatever happens, I have been witness to the fact that it is not a priority for acknowledgements to be made for exit areas, one, and some of the events, and maybe the fire department can actually help me out on that one, as to multiple exits in case of an emergency and people actually live in. Is it a requirement for a mass event, mass crowd event, for mention to be made of, in the event of an emergency, exit points are A, B, C, D? Because psychology, as you explained as well, plays a big part in how persons are going to be reacting in the event of an emergency. So is it a requirement, number one? Is there a penalty for persons who don't do it? Two, because unfortunately in St. Lucia, it's only after something bad happens, then we put these sorts of measures in place. So I'm kind of, is that a requirement, and does that happen in St. Lucia, basically?
You had to go first. I go first?
What we have now in St. Lucia is the mass crowd guideline. It has not been enacted yet, so it cannot be enforced. But it is a guideline that most mass crowd organizers adhere to, because it is a provision that is being policed by NEMO with other emergency agencies such as fire, such as police, such as Ministry of Health, especially the medical section. As well, we have, let me see, Red Cross in some instances. So all these agencies come together to make recommendations for mass crowd events. In terms of answering your question directly about the exit arrangement, yes, that is directly under the purview of the fire service. We have to assess or do a site visit before the event is held, assess the area. Based on the anticipated crowd, we can recommend for the number of exits that are needed. In the case of nighttime activities, we have to ensure that the exits are clearly visible. Whatever exit signs that are posted, if it is nighttime, it has to be illuminated or have sufficient lighting, external lighting, so that persons can visualize it from a distance. So yes, that is in place. It is not legislated as yet, so it cannot be enforced, but it is a guideline that we ensure that most mass crowd organizers adhere to.
I guess I can talk on the international aspect of it. It actually enforced overseas, especially in Europe, especially Lund. When you have a mass crowd event, if the capacity of the place is 150, let's say, 1,500, they do not go over 1,500. Right? And what they do also, they allocate spots. They keep 500 people here, 500 people there, and 500 people there. They separate them in case of emergency. So in certain areas now, exits will serve a certain amount of people, because you don't want to cause where you get bottling or back layering, as we saw in the video I showed you, through the fire exits, so they actually control them. So it is actually a law for to have a certain amount of people in an area. Because I mean, as a fire safety engineer, actually went to a club once, and in Lund, for example, the capacity is 100 people, and they have 50 people outside. When 50 people leave the building, 50 people will enter. It's not about the money, it's not about the partying, it's about safety. And if we start to impose that in St. Lucia, the mentality will change. If the capacity is 150, we stick to 150, we do the 151, no 152. Because the building is designed for that quantity of people. So we need to actually think of this when we have to aspect of fire safety. As mentioned by the fire officer, I've been to several events now where they actually mention the fire exits. I would love that they mention it more, or like they actually stop and say fire exits are located A, B, C, and D. And also they should mention also assembly points, which I don't think we actually mention. It's not about escaping, because imagine everybody going to escape outside and you have a cluster preventing the fire department from entering and actually prevent stopping the fire. So you have to have properly locations for a certain amount of people. So you put assembly points as well, which should be mentioned in the whole aspect of safety.
Okay.
So go ahead. After Lindy, we have two other questions, and I think we'll go to online and we'll have to start wrapping up in terms of the question session, unless we have something burning. Okay? No, after.
Mine might be very quick, because you answered a few aspects of my question. You answered some of it. I was referring to the fire escape routes, the outside external fire escape routes, the stairs outside. How effective were they as safety escape routes? And if you look at different escape routes that are possible. And the second aspect was how much was that a factor in panicking if you knew there were no fires outside external fire escape routes like that in the building? How quickly would you panic? Is that if you know there are no fire escape routes outside? At least if I know I'm in a 3 or 4 story building and there's an outside stairs that you could probably access to get out, I might not panic as much. I might, try and get to those stairs. But the other aspect is if the firemen are coming in, that's probably where they would be coming in, and you probably meet them on the stairs. I don't know.
Because as you mentioned that now, like I said, the fire safety department, fire safety engineer is actually evolving. What is recommended is, like, you actually, when you design a building, you have to have certain areas dedicated to the fire department. So in case of fire department alone supposed to enter that area. Right? So in buildings now, depends on the height of the building now, you recommend to have two fire exits or 2 fire stairs. And in case of fire now, elevators, you're not supposed to use the elevator. Before, you could have used it, but because of situation, people died because of power failure and smoke. For investigation reports, that has changed. So I said investigations play a vital role in changing the aspect of fire safety. And by right now, when you have fire exits, you're supposed to have, like on the wall, the cladding, supposed to have material that actually be able to contain the fire, which I find we don't have in St. Lucia. Containment is not an issue, it's not, I see, used in buildings in St. Lucia. If you have a fire, you're supposed to compartment a building. Areas in the building are supposed to be designated to allow people to be safe for at least an hour and a half, depending on the materials used in the building, which you don't have. Also, the height of the building can determine the type of evacuation. You have 2 types of evacuation, where you have simultaneous evacuation, or you have simultaneous evacuation, or you have
unsimultaneous.
Right? But again, that depends on the design of the building, because the insurance company plays a role as well. Because when people design buildings, you take 2 things into factor: either life safety or property safety. Right? If you take life safety into consideration, you have what you call simultaneous evacuation, where everybody can evacuate the building together. If you have property evacuation, you actually have areas which are compartmented for people to be safe in. Like pressurizing your doors, pressurizing your staircases, actually a factor which is used to help contain the fire. Because within investigations, the distance from the fire department to buildings can be calculated. And that now can actually design the compartment area, where you have doors that are designed for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours. So that's the whole aspect of containment, which we don't. I don't know if we do in St. Lucia, but I'd like to see a change aspect of fire safety. So staircases and stairwells in design now, one area is for the fire department and one area is actually for evacuation purposes by people. It's an evolving industry. And Mr. Limburg?
Hello, I'm not Mr. Limburg.
No.
She's going and then Mr.
Limburg. Good evening, everyone. I must say, coming here, I have a greater appreciation for your field of study. And what worries me is the fact that almost everything that seemed to be important, your response is, I don't know if it is happening in St. Lucia. So it is not really a question from me, but to say that I think it is necessary that you continue informing, educating people, work alongside the fire department, because what we're hearing here is important. Mrs. John Baptiste asked about the mass crowd, etc. I was of the impression that it was something you have to do, thinking that it was legislated, etc. But you know what happens if St. Lucians get to find out this is not the norm, this is not what should happen. So I think it is very important that we continue the discussion. Yes, we have people online, yes, we have people here, but I think it is very important that we educate people where it comes to reacting or how to act in situations like this.
I don't think we wanted that little known fact there, and I suspect you want to respond to that. So we're coming to your question, a short response to that issue.
Thank you, good evening. I'm wearing my former hat. Yes and no. It's not legislated, there's no umbrella legislation for mass crowd events. But the agencies who enforce the guidelines have legislation to enforce. So if you are going to have an event, one of the things you must have is your solid waste management plan. That is a requirement of law. If you are going to have a mass crowd event, you need to get the template from the Solid Waste Management Authority and show them how you are going to clean up the place after the event. The legislation also says if you don't do it, the authority can come in, clean the place, and present you with the bill and enforce it by law. So there are every component of the guideline has its own legislation because the agencies who are enforcing the guidelines have legislation. But there is no overarching piece of the legislation. So I don't want it going out there for people to think, oh, well, it's not enforceable. It is enforceable, and some of them carry some very stiff fines if you don't do what is necessary for a mass crowd event.
And the police can shut down your event.
My question would first of all, I just want to state one fact that it seems that I've gotten the impression that locally we are worse off than we actually are. So I just want to clarify as it pertains to the engineering aspect of fire protection, fire suppression, fire safety. We're a little better off. I mean, as far back as 2006, I personally know of many systems as what you have described in terms of strobe lighting, sirens, fire compartmentation, means of escape plans. We actually do all of that locally. So with legislation actually with the DCA now, for most commercial structures, we are asked to present part of what you have to design, and present is actually, normally we do it, means of escape plans, which is an evacuation plan. Also, the design of the fire protection, whether it is a sprinkler system which is recommended, or standpipes, extinguishers, etc. And a way to escape. We also do adhere to the regulation international. We do IFC, we do the NFPA, and as it pertains to compartmentalization of the buildings, escape corridors, the direction of the doors to escape, we adhere to all of those factors. My question is, and maybe the fire department can help you, is with all of this, and I can present many buildings that have been constructed, modern, that do have those systems installed in place. And it's interesting, one of them you said about the pressurization of the stairwells. Actually, you should be pleased to know that one of the older buildings in Castries, one of the taller ones, would be the financial center. There is a system which pressurizes the stairwell in case of a fire. It actually would pressurize to keep out the smoke for the fire escape of the stairwell. So my question now would be, installation, we do have our professionals locally who can install everything you've spoken about, adhering to international standard. My concern is, after we have installed it, is there any fire safety management on the part of the fire department to re-enter the building to inspect? For example, the reason I would ask that, for example, fire extinguishers have a maintenance expectancy that they need to be maintained every 3 months, or 3 to 6 months, I think. Certain systems, for example, you need to inspect if your emergency lights, the bulbs are working, etc., etc. So we have a similar regulation, or we have a regulation, for example, for the electrical installations, that commercial buildings are supposed to be inspected every 2 years, residential every 5. Do we have something similar as it pertains to the fire protection or fire safety of buildings? Does the fire department allow that to happen?
Just a note that Mr. Lindbergh, to our live audience, is a lecturer here at the South Louis Community College, and you hear the expertise coming there. I suspect that's a direct question for the fire service, who should have probably been up on the lectern as well.
I can answer the question just now.
The simple answer is yes, and we have legislation that mandates it. We have the Labor Act of St. Lucia, number 2006, or what we usually refer to as the Labor Code, which requires that every industrial occupancy be inspected every 24 months by the Chief Fire Officer, and thereafter issue the fire safety certificate. Yeah, so yes, that is in place. How efficiently that is done, maybe not as it should, because given our limited resources, it makes it very difficult to inspect every industrial occupancy as often as we should. But yes, the legislation exists, and we try our best as much as possible to inspect those industrial occupancies and ensure that they meet with the fire safety regulations.
Just to elaborate more, Mr. Lindbergh, thanks for your input. However, in the aspect of fire safety, it is much more than the design. If you can put a suppression system in a building, you can put compartmentation in the building. However, if the material used in the building burns faster than you're designed for, it will behave differently. If you put detectors that are going to react, say, after 30 or 60 seconds, and you have a fast-growing or rapid-growing fire, by the time the detector goes off, it might be too late to actually put out the fire. In modern designs for fire suppression systems, they're actually changing from dilute systems to actually water mist systems, because the aspect of attacking the fire directly is changing. They actually start tackling the fire or tackling the smoke, because they're actually trying to eliminate the oxygen content in the smoke, because smoke also causes harm. Radiation actually causes harm. Materials ignite through radiation. If you have a fire, see where Mr. Peril is, and you get radiation from the chain next to it, it actually spread. And by the time the smoke detector might be in this location, and to find that location, by the time you detect now, it might be too late. Right? So it's not only about the design, meeting the codes, but understand exactly what you have in the building. Understand the materials used in the building. Understand the heat ratio, the heat of the area. Because in investigations, for example, in tunnels, right? Tunnel fires now has changed the whole aspect of fire safety. They used to use ventilation systems and used to use dilute systems. They have changed to water mist systems, because they realize now trains, the materials used, they burn so fast. By the time the ignition system comes on, it is too late. The type of smoke formed can actually kill you. Right? Toxicity is the aspect that actually causes death. It's not only about the fire. You must understand what you have in the building before you can actually design the fire safety aspect for the building. Because codes and standards have been there for years, and yes, still people die, right, because of certain situations. So it's much more than the aspect of meeting the codes and standards. You must understand what's in the building, how they behave for the proper design.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As you may have noticed, I'm not just one of the technicians, I'm also a participant, member of the audience. So I have a question. I've been following all the discussion live and online, which is also live. Okay, and something that is quite nagging is the footage of the nightclub fire. And when you presented the design, the layout of the building and explained what happened, I mean, that has brought up a lot of thought and discussion. I have a very simple question, maybe possible solution. I am not as technical and not a member of the trade, and I'm not in the field, so I really don't know whether it makes sense. So I want to put it to you. You mentioned the instinctive behaviors that really dictate how people react in fire situations. So there's a fire, they run out through the door they came in. Yeah. So is it possible to simply have them come in through all the access, whether exits or entrances, to kind of resolve that situation?
Thank you. I mean, after investigating and being actually doing human behavior, I have a much more understanding for exit signs and actually notifications. In Sweden, I can say Sweden is one of the countries that have taken evacuation human behavior to another level. Every building you go to, you see at least 5 or 6 signs. For the time you enter, you see an exit sign, or you see an arrow pointing to the exit. Right? In some businesses, for example, IKEA has strategically placed fire exit signs all throughout the building through different departments. If you enter the department, anytime you go to area, you see a sign saying exit pointing in that direction. So when you follow the exit sign, you go into the next department. So they use that strategically now to place people in areas following the exit signs. So, as I mentioned before, in companies now, that's why it's important to have training for your staff. So in case of emergency now, you have people dedicated for that responsibility for that area. So in case, like for example, in the station fire, the bartenders knew where the fire exit were, so they actually 10 people come through this direction. But if it was mentioned before the event started, that this is the exit area, right? You go through this exit area, that exit area in case of fire, that could actually could have helped out the situation. Right? In other situations, other studies which I've done for other fire scenarios, people tend to be afraid of if you don't know where you're going. The other scenario where a young lady was going through an exit, but that exit was actually blocked because of the amount of people, and a gentleman was actually trying to help her for another exit because he knew of where it is. So during that now, she was actually fighting him, saying, thinking I know you're actually putting in danger, he's actually trying to save her. So if you go to an area, people have to be aware and look for all exit signs. Please not enter the same place you don't leave the same place you enter. Always look for an exit sign. My wife have an issue with me when we go to places, because as I enter a building, I look around for the exit. Right? And she always tell me, Rohan, you need to stop this. But however, I'm about to be attentive of the area now. So I hope this will change. Right? The design aspect will change. I get the whole aspect of fire safety should be taken another level through, as we said earlier, through communication, through people being aware of the actual importance of fire safety. And fire safety should not be used as a back burner, put on a back burner for building designs. Right. Overseas, from the time a client has the thought of doing a building, they contact the architect contact a fire safety engineer or the fire department. Right? What I think we should do, a recommendation, and it's possible, is actually have authorities having jurisdictions, like when a building is designed, that person have to go through that drawing and make sure that drawing is safe before it is actually approved. And even during construction, you visit the building to make sure it is up to code. If it's not up to code, you should have the authority to actually cut the business, close down the shop. which is actually used overseas. In London, in Belgium, Paris is growing in fire safety. Other first world countries are actually growing in fire safety because of the whole aspect of fire investigation. I mentioned earlier about performance-based design. Australia is actually going in that direction. Every design that comes through an architect have to be reviewed by a fire safety engineer or somebody having authority with jurisdiction, proving to them that in case of emergency or fire, people in the building can evacuate safely. As I mentioned again, required safe evacuation time against available safe evacuation time. So you must do a fire scenario. You must have a worst case scenario of a fire in a building. And first simulation, you can actually see how fire behaves. And that's the direction which fire safety is going. Because codes are there for years, however, it has still failed. Thanks.
Thank you. Just to illustrate what you are saying and how the mind works, the brain works. For those of us who have ever gone to shop at Courts on Chaussee Road, a few years ago they moved the stairs from the immediate left and they put it further inside. It took months for us as shoppers to stop turning left to go to the stairs, and it's only now, people go to the back for the stairs. But that's how the brain works. You come in and it just imprints where you have been, and so when you're going to do the exit, and so to add to what you are saying, you also have to add when you redesign. It's not just the design, but when you redesign your building, you have to run the drills, because instinctively and automatically we're going to turn to what used to be and not what is.
Thank you. And our final question before mine.
Good evening. For me, it's three questions. The first one is on the lighter side. You said that if people have too much clothes, it's a problem. So I'd like to know how much clothes should we be wearing so that we don't get caught in the fire. So that's on the lighter side. Secondly, is Pigeon Island a safe location
for mass
crowd events? Based on what you have said there, it piqued my interest because I can only see one exit, and then we're bothered by some very rough waves, and then another place that has a lot of sea eggs. So is it a safe location? It's a very popular location, and based on if you have a fire or not, is it a safe location in York? And thirdly, my last question is, are there any organizational structures that can be put in place in organizations to help deal with the risk of managing fires and ensuring that persons panic less, quote unquote, or are more acquainted with what to expect in the case of a fire, to deal with things like ensuring the maintenance of the fire safety equipment? Are there any organizational structures that you know of that organizations can put in place to help deal with those issues? That is my more substantive question.
Thank you, Dean Harris.
Well, I guess I'll answer your last question first. In reference to organization structures, I believe it depends. It should fall under the ownership of the managers of the building, right? Because safety should be aspect of the stakeholder of the building. That's why I said earlier on, in foreign countries, from the initial stage of your development of the plan of your building, you must have approval by your fire safety engineer. And the fire safety engineer not only approves the drawing, but also can assist you in actually designing an emergency plan or evacuation plan. You must have that in place before your business actually opens. And also what has been done is recommended by the fire safety department, right, of fire, like I said earlier, by the authority having jurisdiction for companies to actually have people allocated or dedicated to emergencies or fire emergencies. So we pick up this concept in solution in organizations that can actually help in reference to evacuation. This is something that has to change, or have to be taken by the owner of the company. I mean, the fire department can recommend it to them as well too, right? To say you must have evacuation plan in place, or you must have, which I don't see, right? And I guess people have been outside solution can see. When you enter a building, you see an evacuation plan. You see a sign saying you are located here. You see arrows pointing to all exits in the building. So that building has shown to the public that there is actually an evacuation plan. If we put this in our building solution, I believe that can change the mentality when it comes to fire safety. Each floor in all buildings have been, well, in Lund, I'm going to reference to Lund again. Even the building I stayed in, my accommodation building, each floor had an evacuation plan. Right? Before the yeah, before. So if we put that in action as part of a recommendation for building codes, about building design and fire safety, have evacuation plan located at certain points of the building, that can actually help alleviate the problem of fire. Now, the second part for Pigeon Island.
Can that be incorporated in like a maintenance department somehow within the organizational structure? I'm just wondering whether they, with that education, can play that role. You know? No. I'm just asking in relation to what you're saying within the organizational structure.
Yeah, like I said, that depends. That will fall on the structure of the building, of the owner of the building, right? And again, you see, it's not here now. I don't know if it's in the Caribbean, but insurance companies play a big role in fire safety internationally. Your building will get actually incentives if you meet fire safety codes. Right? I believe if we install this solution, the whole aspect of fire safety will change by giving an incentive back. Because, like I said, I've spoken to some insurance companies, they actually benefit. Right? Imagine you have a fire and the bill is not on the code. Right? You can actually, you and insurance company are going to be paying much more in damages than if the building was on the fire safety code. You understand? Because buildings being burned by fire, stopping business, actually affecting the income of the person. Right? So the insurance companies actually help out as well too, that can actually assist. In reference to Pigeon Island, only one entry, one exit. My advice is we actually speak to Sandals and in case of emergency, use their area as the exit. Right? You actually put up a leeway. I'm not sure, I'm not saying my suggestion. Again, it's actually a suggestion in case of emergency. The entrance part can be used for emergency vehicles. If you're going to exit, walk in, you go through Sandals and you go through landings and you go to patient points of the area.
How do you get out of the park? You jump
no, the park has several exits.
Really?
The park has 3 exits. That's 3 exits.
If I
can, 3 exits, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But everybody knows about one.
Yeah. The question about how safe is Pigeon Island as a masquerade venue, as has been highlighted, yes, there are more than one. In fact, there are 3. But if you look at the whole structure of Pigeon Island, if you look at the whole structure of Pigeon Island, there are no really physical structures per se, permanent structures. Very often when we have masquerade events, there are tents that have been put up, there's a stage and things of that sort. But in terms of solid physical structure, there's not that much of it. And Pigeon Island is a wide open area. In case of probably one of these structures, maybe there's a fire, persons can easily disperse outwards and not necessarily have to leave the park immediately. So yes, I would say it's a relatively safe venue, safer than a lot of the indoor venues that we use. I would feel a lot safer at Pigeon Island than some of the other venues that we use. And the question about having a structure in place to manage emergencies in businesses, yes, that exists in quite a few businesses in St. Lucia. Some of them are very proactive. We do quite a bit of training in that area. I don't want to mention the names of any businesses per se right now, but some of them actually include the functions of emergency management as part of the job description of the staff, and so they ensure that it is part of their business function. And risk reduction or risk management is a very critical factor in most businesses now, and they take it very seriously. Given the current trend in increases in disaster and climate change and things of that sort, so risk reduction is taken very seriously in most businesses now.
I'd just like to see
You answer?
No, I just like to see, like you said, risk reduction is an important factor. I would just like to see evacuation plans at the entry of a building. Because if you're at the building for the first time, if you see a picture, you actually know exactly where to escape in case of a fire. So that is my point of view, having the sign right there to show you where the plans are. Thank you.
I'm not sure if this actually obtains, but there was a gentleman here from Slasco, and with the prevalence of boat rides now, boat can catch on fire. Do we have any regulations that extend to the sea?
Do we extinguish the fire?
No, well, in reference to boats and boats and activities now, I think the Coast Guard, actually the boats are actually designed to have a certain capacity of people, and the Coast Guard right now makes sure that's the amount of people on the boat. You know that unless you meet the quantity of people, they will not allow you to go out. And for example, on the Peril, they actually do evacuation and tell you exactly where the safety, where the life vests are. I love to say mention where the fire extinguishers are, because the aspect of them is just life safety, but not about fire in case of fire emergencies. So if you can mention as well to, like, when they go out, you mention the location and show a sign saying fire extinguisher. Even like in buildings, a sign saying fire extinguisher pointing down makes a difference in location for fire extinguisher. So signage play a key factor as well in fire safety. So on the boats they can put signs saying fire extinguisher, or the captain can say in case of emergency A, B, C and D. If you can swim, use a life jacket.
Okay, let me thank our moderator for this segment, Mr. Vladimir Lucian, and thank the audience for all of the questions. A round of applause for our presenter. And we've come to the end of our presentation, so I invite Mr. Rohan John Baptiste to come to the front to receive an appreciation token from the Vice Principal of the South Louis Community College, Dr. Merle Sinclair Auguste. So ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our presentation this evening by Mr. John Baptiste. I am sure that you were illuminated. So when Mr. John Baptiste started his presentation, I was thinking, why is an engineer dealing with the concept of panic? Because it seemed like a concept of panic, of human behavior, and I wasn't hearing all the engineering coming out. But the relationship became so clear. You agree with me? So clear. It wasn't just that you were looking at panic for the sake of panic, but how it can affect all of the building codes, all of the engineering information that you need to take into consideration. And I think it has made us look at the issue of fire safety in a different light. We at South Louis are pleased to have such expertise on our staff, and I must say that the college at its main mass event, graduation, does identify its assembly points and exits. We do, right, fire officers? We follow that very well. And we also have coordinators. We need to work on that, but I know for sure that when we were at DAGS, we did identify somebody. So with the information that we now have of a fire safety engineer on staff, I think even more so, the weight is on his shoulders to ensure that the college complies and does what it is supposed to. So we are very encouraged by this presentation to continue in this vein, and we're looking forward to our next presentation from another lecturer of the college coming very soon. I could advertise it right now. We are giving you the date. It's the first Wednesday of April. Mr. Lucien, what date is that? The 4th of April. Mark the date. You know, the Division of Technical Education and Management Studies has date night tomorrow, right, Mr. Harris?
No.
No date night, but they have date night. And we have date night every first Wednesday of the month. So it's a date for the next lecture to really see the expertise of the staff here at the college and eventually the community. We intend to broaden it, as we have said. So as we come to a close, it's always good to say thanks, give thanks. Mr. Williams is breaking protocol.
To give you a short historical background of the start of the 1948 fire. This is specifically for the firemen who was there, because I was there and my father was a fireman. So I would be so pleased if you can give me 4 or 5 minutes, no more than that, to tell you how the fire started. There might be a lesson for how fires start and how they are put out. Would you like me to go ahead? Can I?
We're engaging community.
All right. Okay, it was 1948. I was 12 years old. I was there where the fire started, but I didn't start it. My father was a fireman. He used to be a veteran of the First World War, but he was part of the constables. Now we have a Castries police. There was a Castries town council, and the constable was Kaka Tibet, CTB, Kaka Tibet, that's how they call the firemen. Now the fire was supposed to be in the hands of the police, but water was in the hands of the town council under these constables. So my father and their lot used to supply water to the battleships that came into harbor. How did the fire start? On Victoria Street and Coral Street. You know where that taxi place is at the top of Jeremy Street? Right around there. So it was about maybe going on 7. We lived on the Chaussee Road. The barracks building was where you have the cluster buildings by Jeremy Street and Bridge Street and go up where those new buildings are. Well, that's where the whole fire started. There was supposed to be a fire engine, but the fire engine was parked there, and we used to run up and down clear on the thing, so that was how it was. But when you read the official government report, it says how you know the fire engine this and that, but that was not the problem. So the fire started on that street in the tailor shop. You had the old style tailors, old style, you had an iron with a cover. You put charcoal in it. When you slide it, then you take your hot iron and you press your clothes. So the guy started his fire to do his clothing, tailor, must have left and gone for a drink. I forgot it, so the thing started to burn. So you saw smoke. So I was leaving the barracks to go home, and I saw the smoke. So I ran back down and tell my father and that, look, there's a fire there. Then I went back to see how the thing was going. So the smoke started, and then you see flames started in the building. I mean, it's a tailor shop, a lot of clothing and so on. Then after a while you see the building on the other side of the street start to smoke. And that was a rum shop. So before too long you hear patow, patow. The rum bottles breaking. So the fire starts to go. As the heat starts off, then you start to back off. In the meantime, there's no fire engine. What do the guys use to put on the fire? They had a little cabaret. It was a little truck on 2 wheels, and you push it, and you put the thing down. So the guys got there. The guys got to the place, take the hose out, throw it on the ground, pull it, then they screw it onto the hydrant, open the water, and the water do shwee, 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 shwee on the side of the hose, no water. And that was the start of the burning down of Cascades. No water in the hose. Before the end of the night, 4/5 of the town of Cascades was burned down. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Williams. Somebody who actually lived it. It's not often we get those experiences, and they're so important that we document them. Mr. Williams is just a walking encyclopedia of information. Now you want to do like Mr. Williams and break protocol. Okay, I thought it was a historian. More information here. We could be here all night with the wealth of information that we have here. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Williams. Thank you for continuing to support all the work that we do here at Sir Arthur Lewis. He's almost like a member of staff. So we want to recognize our viewership online. We had almost 160 viewers and participants, and we really want to thank you for joining us. It shows us that we can have more reach, and we're extending this to the OECS islands very soon with our contacts in the various community colleges. So they'll soon be hearing more about Sir Arthur Lewis and its Illumination lecture series. So to give thanks, we first want to thank the Office of the Vice Principal, whose initiation this was, and the push that came from that office and the support that continues to come from that office to ensure that this app happens. So Vice Principal and Ms. Dora Henry are the office, so let's give them thanks because they do take on a lot. We want to thank our partners, the OECS, Flo, Valerie, and Computer World, and we also had with us live streaming the last time Acid Creations, and he's due to join us again very soon. We want to recognize 2 students who work with us. They're not present here this evening, but they assisted with the production of our teaser that some of you may have viewed. Ms. Tanisha Prosper was a student in the digital media class, as well as Mr. Omar Kombi, who was here with us last time, and they continue to assist us with the work that we have to do. So we want to give them recognition. You notice that we have, I'm not sure if we've drawn attention to our banner and to our logo. That too was designed in-house by the digital media lecturer, Mr. Michael Hart, who is not here this evening, but we want to recognize him for the design of the logo and our invitations. And that is very important now that you're able to brand and brand professionally, so we thank him for that. We reached out to the Department of Mechanical Engineering when Mr. Lubo agreed to do this presentation. So we want to thank the Rohan, oops, Freudian slip maybe? Let's go. Mr. John Baptiste. And we want to thank Mr. Peril, the head of department for mechanical engineering, for agreeing to introduce our esteemed speaker tonight. All of the infrastructure here, we use the library reading room because of what's involved here, that we're able to get connectivity. But for that to happen, our ITS department has to be on board. And we want to give them thanks, the head, Mr. Crispin Blas, and the technicians who work with him to ensure that we have that facility available for our online viewers. So thank you to Mr. Crispin Blas and the ITS department of the college. Hair gets transformed. Like I said, it is the library, and you probably know just from the signs, but it does get transformed, not only in terms of the movement of the furniture, but also in terms of the decor. And almost single-handedly, Miss Marie-Louise Catty, please stand and take a bow, transforms. Of course, Ms. Dora Henry overseeing all of that, and our operations department, who needs to transform here back to look like a library tomorrow, very early before the students get in. We want to give thanks to our operations department and to Ms. Catty and Ms. Dora Henry, who execute this very effectively. Audio, an important aspect of any production, especially when you're streaming online, that we want to deal with any hiccups. And we have with us Mr. Garvin, help me with the last name, McDonald, who is ever willing to assist. I won't tell you how far he has to travel when he leaves here tonight, so we wish him traveling mercies as he goes home after this event. But thank you so much, Garvin, for your expertise and for your willingness to assist us. Please give Garvin a round of applause. And also to our library staff, who never hesitated when we asked to use their room, because it is an inconvenience for them, but we very willingly give up their space when we come in to transform it. So we say thank you to the library staff and to Mrs. Kathy Butch McDiarmid for the use of the library. We thank also the members of the media. They may not be present here today, but they do give us coverage. They were here earlier today doing interviews with Mr. John Baptiste and Mr. Lucien, the chair of the committee, so we thank them for their publicity and the promotion and the continued support of the college as well. And to our esteemed speaker, yes, it's long, but it's necessary, to our esteemed speaker for the wealth of information he provided, for making us look at this aspect in a new light, and hopefully for raising the consciousness of the society where fire safety is concerned, because it is such an important issue. It may not happen regularly, but hundreds, thousands of lives could be lost if we don't pay attention to it. So please, round of applause for Mr. John Baptiste for a wonderful presentation. And finally, I'm ending. To you, the audience, for being here this evening with us, both you here live and those of you online. We thank you so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you at our next lecture on April 4th, right here, live on stream, SALCCTV. You can go to our webpage, our YouTube page. Mr. Emmanuel has been coaching me to say this well, and I'm not getting it. But you can join us on any of those platforms for you to join our conversation. It will remain online. The first lecture is still there, and this lecture will be on there as well. And if you ask questions, we will get Mr. Javatis to go on there and respond to them, just in case you have an afterthought. So thank you so much to Mr. Emmanuel, who we don't thank because he's a member of the committee, for ensuring this happens. It is his passion. He insists that we can't do it just for here, that everybody needs to get access. So we thank him for insisting. And we close now, and we wish you safe journeys home, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much. I know there are refreshments, but the audience, they can't get refreshments. Very light refreshments. You know you can't eat heavy too late. So we have some very light refreshments that you could, and have a little chat before you leave. Please.